What's going on, guys? It is Friday, November the 27th, which means it is, yes, the day after Thanksgiving. So first and foremost, I hope you guys all had a lovely and safe Thanksgiving with your family. I know we got to spend some time with the family, and that was nice. But again, hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. Hope everybody stayed safe. But now let's get into the news in my news radar. So let's start off first with what is kind of a weird news story. So if you are, of some age, like if you're not like 15 or 20, you may remember this store that existed back in ye olden times called RadioShack. Now RadioShack was around for a long time, and they sold everything from parts for your ham radio to, just electronics, basically. They were like the first big electronic store, at least in my memory. And I remember as a kid, I used to love going into Radio Shack because I was always one of those kids that you show me a wall of cables and things like that, and I'm like, ooh, what does this do? What's that? And they had all sorts of things. They would sell later on phones and gaming things and just all sorts of fun stuff like that. Well, as online really hit, Radio Shack didn't adjust quickly enough. There were some mistakes made in their business model, and Radio Shack eventually began to really fail. Now, believe it or not, there are still some Radio Shack stores alive. There's actually one in Knoxville, Tennessee, where I live, in West Knoxville, in a mall in West Knoxville. There is a Radio Shack store still there. And yeah, it's a shell of its former self. They sell like really strange things, like like those little toy helicopters and like rip off retro game consoles and just strange things like that. I mean, it's still kind of fun for me to walk in there and see what weird things might be in there. But in general, Radio Shack has kind of exited the public zeitgeist. Well, apparently the brand itself might actually have some value left in it, or at least that's what some people are hoping. Basically, there are a couple of investors, Alex Mayer and Ty Lopez. They've been going around purchasing defunct brands like Pier 1, Dress Barn, etc., and then trying to leverage that brand name to continue selling products. And you can kind of look at this and say, well, is Radio Shack really coming back, or is just someone using the brand? Well, it's more the latter, but this is something that happens more than people may realize in situations like this. One that's a little bit closer to my heart is, if you're familiar with Die Hard batteries, you may have seen a new push to be selling Die Hard batteries again. Well, look, these are not the same batteries that Die Hard used to be. These are the same. If you know anything about this, Advanced Auto Parts selling Die Hard batteries. Well, Die Hard batteries are all they are is the same battery Advanced Auto Parts had been selling for the last, 10 years. With a new sticker on them. But the brand means something to people, so it pulls people in. So the question is, does the Radio Shack brand still have any gravitas? Does it still have any weight or impact for people to be able to still use it to sell things? And I think that's the primary question here. And I think I'm more interested to see what you guys think. Do you guys remember Radio Shack? Did you go to Radio Shack? This is going to be something that's going to be an online only relaunch. So the local, the physical stores, of which there are 400 still left. So I'm lucky enough to have one in my town. This is separate from that. Would you go to a RadioShack.com and buy something? I mean, does that brand mean anything to you? I'm skeptical that it does. And there's actually a quote in here from Robert Pasikoff. It's a very thin line between being iconic and being dead. They actually go on to say here, Radio Shack will sell from its own website as well as an Amazon storefront, and it remains to be seen how it can differentiate its stock from what Amazon already sells at a discount. Should be interesting to see. I wish them, the best. The Radio Shack brand was, as I said, was near and dear to my heart. Let's talk again about the next versions of these Surface devices, the Surface Pro 8 and the next Surface laptop. We talked about the Surface Pro 8 in a news radar a while back in early November, where basically Surface Pro 8 leaked and it wound up on eBay for people to be able to purchase. Strangely enough, very odd for that to happen, but it was there and it's sold. Well, now we have a little bit more to talk about here in terms of these new devices from Windows Central. We have here a photo of the next Surface Laptop 4, and if you're thinking that looks very similar to last year, well, you're correct, and that's kind of the point. This is the Surface Pro 8, and again, it's going to look almost identical to last year's model. Basically, the internals are all that is going to be improved, and they say that, this is true. This is very similar to what they did with the 2020 Surface Pro X. They went from the SQ1 to the SQ2 and left everything else effectively the same. Obviously, they will be getting, the 11th gen processors as well as the Intel Iris Xe. I think it's pronounced Xe. I don't think you're supposed to read that. Never heard it read out loud. I've just been seeing written Iris Xe graphics, which should be a pretty big jump. I mean, honestly, trying to game or do anything that's GPU intensive on the Surface Pro 7 it's doable, but it's not that great. The Iris graphics are a little bit better than just the Intel HD stuff, but the Iris Xe should be another step in the right direction, and that's a place where they have to keep up because integrated graphics have gotten so much better with Ryzen, and now with Apple's M1 being absolutely incredible in terms of GPU performance. Xe is going to have to really do a lot to keep up. LTE should be a feature in these new Surface devices as well. So 2021, early 2021, we should have more details and more information about these new Surface devices. Probably not a huge shock there, not a lot to be super excited about. Just looks like a simple refresh. And let's close this show with something that's a little bit interesting here. So with the PS5 just coming out, scalping has been a really big problem. So there's several websites that allow people to basically utilize bots to just soak up tons and tons and tons of stock of PlayStation 5s, which keeps people that actually want them from buying them, and their goal there is to resell them at a profit. Well, there's a YouTube channel, MVG, Modern Vintage Gamer. He has a great YouTube channel, does a lot of really good work. He tweeted the other day where someone sent out an email asking if they could place an ad in one of his YouTube videos advertising their scalped PlayStation 5s. And he says here, the longer they hold on to hardware, the more difficult it will be to make a profit. And this is true. And what I think there's two things I kind of wanted to dive into here when it comes to this situation. One, scalpers are pieces of shit. They're keeping people from. It's predatory. It's obviously, I'm not going to shock anybody here. It's a bad thing to do. Don't do that. But what's interesting here is if you're scalping and you're able to sell your stuff really well, you don't need to put an ad in someone's YouTube video. So the fact that they're reaching out makes me wonder if these scalpers are struggling to get rid of their stock, which I honestly hope that they are. The best thing we can all do is for no one to buy from these people, and maybe when the PS6 comes out, they'll think back and they'll think, oh well, I can't do that again. That did not work out well for me. I lost money. Maybe they're gonna have to wind up selling the stuff on eBay, at the same price as the new ones, and at that point they're gonna wind up losing money because of eBay, seller fees and things like that. Another thing to think about is what kind of YouTuber would accept an ad like that? Like, what amount of money would that be? It just seems like that would be such a terrible thing to do. And credit to MVG, obviously he did not take them up on this offer. It'd be really weird, hey, today we're sponsored by this random eBay channel that's selling scalped PlayStation 5s. Like, what a weird ad that would be to read. I don't think that's one any self-respecting YouTuber would ever read. So guys, not a ton of news today. It is the day after Thanksgiving after all. There's not a lot going on, but that's what we have to talk about today. Stay tuned for more coverage just like this. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends. If you enjoy my content, please consider becoming a Scary If Literal member. You'll get access to a whole bunch of emoticons to use with live streams and a shout out on an upcoming video. Thanks as always for your continued support.